On the mechanical birdie we go. We didn't meet the love of our life. Very sad. We boarded a Garuda, an eagle-like flying automaton the size of a small airship, bound for Yokohama. We ourselves were strapped upon its broad back, exposed to the buffeting of the wind with each beat of its jointed metal wings. Then it began to beat its wings, and he rose up in the air. That's Groom Fog, because he's going to be kind of in shambles after this trip. Thankfully, there were sleeping berths within the Garuda's hull, and other conveniences besides, but we all had to take turns upon the beds and sleep in shifts. I thought it quite an adventure. It felt a little as though we journeyed upon a mobile battlefield, or a genteel house turned utterly to uproar by an unexpected emergency. I was thoroughly enjoying myself. My character is now courageous. Sounds like things are going fine. Groom Fog some more. Think about this though, it's day 27 and we're almost at Japan. So we're doing far better this time around than last time. I awoke to one of the crew's grinning faces peering in at me through a porthole. I merely smiled back blankly, not perceiving that said crewman must be suspended outside the Garuda to be so rudely looking in upon me. I rushed up on deck once I had taken my sleep-muddled senses into hand, and saw the crew hard at work suspending an inverted canopy of pale blue silk under the Garuda. "Are you making a sail?" I asked, taking a wild guess. "No," said the nearest crew member, with a crack-toothed grin. "Emperor Sichi does not like airships and the like. The Chinese are likely to try to shoot us down if they spot us." "Sky-colored camouflage," Monsieur Fogg remarked, coming up on deck beside me. "An ingenious solution." "We will fly over unnoticed," I exclaimed. "Perhaps. The Empress doesn't like us, but she does like taxing trade, and we pay tax." The girl tossed her head and flashed another grin. "That's why she puts up with you foreign devils, and why she winks at the airships as long as we put some effort in." "You have a very political mind for an airwoman," I noted. "My pa taught me to read English for his sins," she barked, a laugh. "The name's Lynn Carrington, and while my pa was European and by all accounts a devil besides, ma's a nice village girl from Yunnan." She stuck her hand out, and I pressed a kiss to it, with grave formality, which made her laugh and then punch me on the arm as though I had made a great jest. We couldn't woo her. Oh dear. Anyways, Yokohama. Carrington, as she insisted I call her, tried to convince me to come out on the wings with her. "It's a thrill like no other," she assured me. "The only way to fly." Who am I to deny such an invitation?" I said, and stepping up beside her. Carrington's face lit up at my words, and quick as a flash she roped us together and tied one end to a sturdy metal pole which seemed placed for the purpose of securing errant wing walkers. Uh-oh. I waited for her to mount the wing and followed, aware of her greater experience. We ran the length of the wing nimbly, stretching the rope taut between us. I looked at the vista below us. Far, far below us. I felt a prickle of sweat as I began walking out onto the wing. I could feel the reverberations of the engine through the metal, and the wind whipped into my eyes. What had possessed me to agree to such rash action? Carrington laughed. Of course I had done it. To impress a girl. Apparently I am doomed never to learn my lesson when it comes to my pride. Still, I cannot pretend I regretted a moment of it. Carrington and I sat together at the joint of the Garuda's wing as it banked and descended to its destination. Absolutely nothing between our feet and the enlarging vista of Yokohama. I was almost sorry to land. Alright, let's quickly go to the market. Sell the wax cylinders. Excellent. The tobacco. I'm not gonna go to those cities. Ushanka. Yeah, just sell that. There's a katana worth money in Salt Lake City. Geometry. That one I want to bring. Why must the clock go so fast? Let's get the katana. I want to go on this one. Tomorrow at 8 AM. Yes, the experimental hovership Noelani. 4 suitcases. We have enough of those. We have enough, I mean, right? We have 3 suitcases. In which case, let's buy everything. We'll get to Honolulu, we can sell things there. Let's explore, in case we can find anything. You never know. I mean, we already picked our route. I don't want to go the steamship route. We did that last time, it took forever, and of course, we kind of botched the uprising. It was hard to believe that Yokohama had once, had only relatively recently opened to foreigners. There was an eerie foreigners district, entire foreigners district, not far from the waterfront, where it was common to hear Chinese or Russian as well as Japanese. Right, this one we've done before, because we went to Yokohama yesterday. Let's try some other options then. There was a melding of cultures and clothing styles. Russians arrayed in the rich colors, hoop-skirted British ladies, lately of Bengal or Singapore, Americans who had adopted the coat-like haori over their shirts and trousers. I noticed a Japanese man watching the scene with a look of intense concentration and scribbling in a notebook. "What are you doing?" He jumped and left a smear of ink on the paper. He looked up, clearly irritated. "Do you mind?" he said, his accent an unholy mix of Dutch, French and English. "I am making a drawing for a woodcut." Why does that American appear drunk? I wondered aloud, and he covered his drawing jealously. "It is an artistic impression of the foreigners," he stressed. You dislike foreigners then? I predicted. "You are a very strange people," he pronounced, after a brief silence. "So are you!" I exclaimed, to his vast, untempered amusement. He collared one of the women's skirts lovingly, his hand on the page much gentler and kinder than his voice had been. Finally, he thrust the paper in my direction, assuring me that it was only a preliminary sketch. I accepted gracefully, charmed that he had chosen to bestow a gift upon a near stranger. I stored it carefully. It was a fine souvenir of Yokohama. So we still got the drawing, which is fine. Departs tomorrow, right? Tomorrow at 8 AM. That's pretty early. And a big health drop, and fog is almost... fog is kind of low on health. This could be risky. But we'll take our chances. With the last light of the evening, I attended to Mr. Fogg, ensuring he was comfortable with a dear wish he would have a restorative night. We'll need that if we're going to go on a sea voyage to Honolulu. Let's go. On the Noelani. Let's go. Look at that, the hovercraft. The Noelani was a new concept, we were told, a hover barge making the long-distance journey from Yokohama to Honolulu in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. I had not realized it was an experiment when buying tickets, and attempted to balk But of course, Monsieur Fogg was not one for the changing of hearts, and therefore insisted upon going on board. We and the other passengers of this inaugural crossing must have looked pale and uneasy as we set off. Even the captain was sweating. No doubt the heat was to blame. Besides, standing next to the captain was our very own artificer. So what could possibly go wrong? And indeed, when disaster struck, its nature took us all quite by surprise. Thank you for the foreshadowing game. Oh boy. Oh boy, what have we gotten ourselves into now? What can possibly go wrong this time? The first day aboard was blissfully quiet. The ship bucked along across the waves, and I stayed at the rail, acclimatizing myself to the movement and enjoying the vast view of the ocean ahead of us. In the evening I sat with a Mademoiselle Carlotta, a flashy American gold prospector who was, apparently, extraordinarily rich, though she carried herself like someone who had only come into wealth recently. Someone only too much here, I think. Evening came with no sign of the artificer or the captain. Perhaps they were busy ensuring we stayed upright in the water. Indeed, Kebzero. It's a little bit of a hint. But we're making good progress, at least. For now, we noticed the trouble when my bread roll slid from the side of my plate and rolled against the side of the craft, quickly followed by another passenger's wine glass. I stayed seated. It was clear enough what was happening. The entire ship was listing to the left. A moment later, a strange noise began to issue from the engines below. It sounded somewhat like a scream. The only other person in the dining car was the retired detective, Monsieur Jaffer. He gripped onto the table edge with whitened knuckles. I stumbled to my feet and made for the exit from the room. The shrieking noise from the engine stopped, but the boat did not right itself. Passepartout, perhaps it would be useful to ascertain the cause of this misalignment, my master suggested. Yes, monsieur, I replied. I headed from the dining car to the engine room to find our artificer. Negotiating the corridors was a difficult proposition due to our stubborn tilt, but we were, I could sense, slowly moving back to upright once more. Perhaps we were not about to sink after all. Suddenly, Mademoiselle Carlotta leapt into my path. Passepartout, she hissed. Mademoiselle, what is the matter? I demanded. I have just come from the engine room, she replied, her expression aghast. Ah, Passepartout. She stumbled, her voice a tremor. Mademoiselle, tell me, please. It is Madame Chou, our artificer, Passepartout. She is dead. Oh no. I hurried to the boiler room. And it was true. Madame Chou was not only dead, the circumstances told a clear story. She had been murdered. The weapon lay close by. From the doorway, Mademoiselle Carlotta breathed. That katana, Passepartout, it is yours, isn't it? I looked down at it. Funny, at first, I had not recognized it because of the blood pooling around it. It is, I confirmed, my voice shaky and hollow. Uh-oh. Mademoiselle Carlotta took a step away, then quite suddenly fled from the room. I was left with body and weapon and a terrible anticipation of what would happen next. Uh-oh. This can't be good. The next day, the investigation, such as it was, began in earnest. The captain demanded to talk to everyone, but of course, everyone had an alibi. Um... He's been put into the frame. He's been framed, yeah. Most likely. The time of death was declared by Monsieur Jaffer as being 2 or 3 hours before the body was discovered, based on his experience and the temperature of the corpse. But I am no doctor, he added. So your assessment is approximate? I asked. It is, but a few hours at least must have passed between Madame Chu's death and Mademoiselle Carlotta's discovery of her. The flesh, Passepartout, was quite chilled. The manner of death was quite obvious, at least, and had been confirmed. Surely it would have been a noisy affair, General Peters remarked. Did anyone hear anything? No one had, indeed, if the ship had not begun listing without its words. No one had. Indeed, if the ship had not begun listing without its artificer's guiding hand, we might not have discovered poor Madame Chu for several hours more. The scene of the crime could not be sealed, because the crew needed access to the boiler, which was still making curious noises. At least we were fully upright once more. There was no doubt the culprit was still aboard, but there was no clues to suggest who it might be. But the weapon, that belonged to us, and had been spirited out of our own locked cabin. That, the captain huffed, is the only piece of true evidence we have, Passepartout. Where were you and your master at the time of the crime? I told the truth. I was taking a turn on deck, alone, my master, I believe, was in the drawing room. Also alone, Monsieur Fogg put in, helpfully. The captain nodded. It does not look good, gentlemen. What possible motive could we have? I protested. The captain shrugged. I am a captain, not a police detective. Our course is simple, Monsieur Fogg said directly. We are in the ocean. There is nowhere for us to run. Therefore, no need to imprison us. Here is our offer. Let us discover the true culprit by the time we reach port, or you may arrest us for the crime. I rubbed my hands. A chance to save ourselves. The captain nodded. Very well, you have until we dock. Once he was gone, Monsieur Fogg turned to me. Passepartout, our situation is desperate. You must uncover the truth. What will you do? I demanded. I will consider the matter, Monsieur Fogg replied. There were only a few days remaining. I drew up my list of suspects and attempted to do some detecting. There was no time to lose. Oh boy. Can we prove our innocence? I don't know. We're gonna try though. I began my investigations. At the scene. Several feet had trampled through it by now, of course, and there had been ample chance for the murderer to come in and remove anything incriminating they might have left behind. Even the dust had drifted away through the open porthole. Oh, so you have to go through a very specific path here, I think, to actually uncover the crime. I don't remember it. I stood, trying to imagine the crime. Madame Chu had been working, no doubt, at the machine. Her attacker had come up behind. It would have been quick, but no doubt the Madame would have cried out. The boat was large, but not so large that we would not have heard the cry. Suddenly the boat listed, and the machine made a squealing noise. And I looked over the controls, fearing disaster. But it seemed the artificer was tending her ship even from beyond the grave. A lever snapped, a piston pumped, a valve opened, and a blast of cold air shot out across the floor of the boat. And then the flap closed. The boat tilted back upright, and the cold air spread away. Presumably, it was some regular function of the boat that helped to keep it upright. The exact workings were artifice beyond my skills, of course. With that, I left the engine room. Can do nothing but wait. Fog Valet Dapper, full report. Apparently we're doing okay then, in the valeting part of things. I spent the next day asking questions of Mademoiselle Carlotta. Mademoiselle, you must help me, I began. Mademoiselle Carlotta nodded, though I could see fear in her eyes, and she had demanded to talk out on the open deck in view of the bridge. Whatever I can do, she said. Did you know Madame Chu? Mademoiselle shook her head. I'd heard of her reputation, of course. That's why I agreed to board this ship, but I'd never met her. And yet you went to visit her in the boiler room. I asked, remembering the circumstances under which Mademoiselle Carlotta had discovered the body. The boat was about to capsize. It was tipping right over. I hurried down to the boiler room to see what was going on, and if I could help. How might you have helped? I am no artificer, but I had an interest in this device of Madame Chu's, she said, so I know a bit about its function. Anyway, I thought the Madame might be able to use a pair of hands. Tell me of Madame Chu's reputation. She is a one-of-a-kind, Carlotta replied. A new Savarkar. This hovership is her own creation, and there is nothing else like it anywhere. It will revolutionize international trade if it is successful. Tell me about yourself. What brings you aboard? She shrugged. I made my money in gold on the west coast of America, she said. Now I own a small shipping line, but it is a hobby, really. A competing line, mademoiselle? I inquired. I was hoping not, she replied. I was going to make an offer to buy her whole fleet, but I don't think that offer would be worth very much now. You think Carlotta is shady? We'll see, Kebzero, we'll see. Have you lost a lot of money? No, she replied, though I have not earned any either. She folded her arms suddenly. But what about you? Where were you when it happened? I was taking a turn on deck, I told her. But you seem determined to find someone to blame. Goodness, Passepartout, does the captain seriously think you did it? Never mind my predicament, mademoiselle. She looked at me with sympathetic eyes. It is a terrible thing to be accused of that which you did not do. Where were you when the crime occurred? I was in my cabin. I have an alibi for that, you'll be pleased to hear. The ship's butler brought me my gin and tonic about an hour before the dinner, right about when Jaffer said it happened. I thanked her for her time. Had I learned anything? I could not be sure. That night I remembered to adjust the pocket watch, as we had crossed the international date line and gained ourselves a day. So we're essentially halfway ahead of time. Not bad. We're doing okay. A few days down, and I felt I had learned very little, or if I had learned a lot, I was too confused to see it. To try and clear my head, I spent a few hours talking to Monsieur Jaffer. Monsieur, you must help me. Jaffer smiled thinly. I am retired, Passepartout, and not entirely through choice. What happened to you? He shrugged. There was an unlicensed trade in opium where I worked. I discovered it, but I did not shut it down. In fact, he spread his hands. I had a family to feed, so to speak. We found a corrupt cop. Oh no! It's a corrupt cop. This can't be good. That is understandable. I do not think most people would agree, he replied rather sadly. But never mind that. My time with the law is over. I cannot help you. My past would only interject whatever case... It would only infect whatever case you might build. I left Jaffer at the rail, contemplating the rushing water below. Uh-oh. We're getting close to Honolulu. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. I had barely any time left. Hawaii was fast approaching. I used what I had. Mulling over what I had learned so far. It was not much, in truth. The time of death was 2 or 3 hours before dinner, but Monsieur Jaffer could not be precise. The fault in the engine we had experienced appeared unrelated. It had happened after Madame Chu's death, presumably as a result of her no longer being in attendance. Mademoiselle Carlotta had found the body. Having visited the engine room for some reason, I had encountered her in the corridor outside. Of Madame Chu's work, I knew it was remarkable, a one of its kind. Mademoiselle Carlotta believed it Mademoiselle Carlotta believed it would revolutionize the international trade routes. The actual workings of the ship were quite opaque. I had seen the system noisily venting cool air at floor level when righting itself, but no one seemed to know quite how it functioned. Had Madame Chu been murdered to prevent her making more such vessels? Mademoiselle Carlotta had been considering buying a fleet of boats like this one. And presumably now could not. The artificer's death surely was a blow for her. Someone had taken the weapon from her cabin, opening the lock and relocking it behind them without apparent difficulty, but no doubt keys were common amongst the crew and easily stolen by a dedicated passenger. Jaffer had a shady past, but it did not appear to have any bearing on the case. It was a puzzle, and no mistake. I returned to my master to see if his thinking had come to any conclusion. Only one thing occurs to me, Monsieur Fogg said ruminatively. The noise. Madame Chu did not die in her sleep. Someone must have heard her call out. Did you hear her? I did not, Monsieur Fogg admitted, which is something of a conundrum. I don't know if we investigated properly. We're about to find out. Morning came, and the shores of Hawaii were in sight. The captain approached, regret on his face, his cap in his hand. Well, Passepartout, Monsieur Fogg, what is it to be? I believe I have a theory, I replied nervously. The captain nodded briskly. I'm glad to hear it. We will gather everyone together, and you can discuss what you have discovered. Oh, this is a Poirot episode. You know, a murder mystery thing. Very well. He nodded. Come at once. Monsieur Fogg touched my elbow as we followed the captain to the drawing room, as the others were called. Passepartout, please be cautious. We are still under suspicion. Do not attempt to bluster, or they will think you are guilty. Yes, monsieur. He nodded, and we stepped into the room. Mademoiselle Carlotta was visibly fretting, looking about with a clear fear of someone. Monsieur Jaffer leant by the window, his eyes clouded. General Peters looked frankly cross. presumably because of the delay to his journey. That's why we took this journey, Kebzero, to have another story, right? But the goal is to actually complete it properly. And there are some stories that have very different outcomes, depending on your own choices, and choices you've done miles ahead. I mean, the Black Rose thing, for example, we ignored that one. We traveled north instead of south. So we can't pursue that story. In this run, at least. Anyway, and some of them are very interconnected. It's difficult to find them all. I cleared my throat and began to speak. Ladies and gentlemen, I have brought you together because I believe I know who killed our artificer. Of course you know, General Peter said. You did it. The weapon was yours. You've no alibi. And you're a damned Frenchie to boot. Yeah, I mean, because there are stories wherever you go. So even if you kind of diverge from them, you're still gonna see parts of them. I'm kind of sad we didn't get the full story of the Mongolian princess. I kind of assumed we were gonna find something in Urga. Maybe I made some wrong dialogue choices. I don't know. I honestly don't know. But yeah, that's why this game has a fair bit of replayability. I mean, you're gonna see some of the story bits over and over again, especially the ones tied to specific cities, but there's still room for variety. So even if you travel the same routes, you're gonna find new adventures. That's one of the good things about this game. Anyways, yeah. I held up a hand for silence. The key to this whole affair, I began nervously, was the lack of a scream. I saw people sitting up sharply. We all saw the unpleasant manner of Madame Chu's death, but none of us heard it. I began to wonder, how could that be? It was no doubt, sadly, rather brief, General Peter said. That is not the important point, I replied. The killer covered her mouth, Monsieur Fogg said. I shook my head. It is simpler than that, I declared. We did not hear her scream because there was another louder noise that covered it. General Peters sat up sharply. The whistling, he declared. From the engine. Every now and then it makes a short, sharp squeal like a dying pig. The captain turned to him with a frown. It's true that when the boat rights itself, it makes a squeal. But it's only for a moment. Not enough to cover a scream. Not enough time for someone to be attacked. Unless it was perfectly timed. The captain looked unconvinced. Well, perhaps. I suppose that's possible. I allowed that fact to sink in. The next detail is... the time of death. I saw Jaffer frown sharply. At the time told to us by Monsieur Jaffer, no one has an alibi for their whereabouts except for Mademoiselle Carlotta, who was in her cabin, receiving a gin and tonic from the butler. Any of us could have been in the boiler room, bringing Madame Chu to grief. Indeed, Jaffer replied, but what of it? How sure are you of that time? Jaffer nodded. I touched her. She was quite cold. What if she was cold for another reason? Like what? General Peters put in. A cold blast of air. He shrugged. It would have to be a very long, very cold blast, he said. Wind through an open porthole wouldn't do it. I held up a finger for silence. Monsieur Jaffer, if such a thing were possible. The old detective shrugged. Then I would not know for certain. A coroner would have said more from the blood, but I could not. If the temperature were not a factor, she could have died at any time. I nodded, satisfied. Let us consider. the business arrangements of Madame Chu. I saw the captain and Mademoiselle Carlotta exchange sharp looks. As you know, the artificer was the inventor of this ship. You may not know she was considering going into business with Mademoiselle Carlotta. The captain shook his head. She was going into business with me and me alone. I tried to persuade her, Madame Carlotta admitted. I tried to befriend her. Change of hats now, Countess? I don't have a detective hat. I do not have a detective hat, sadly. But I suppose we are French. We are playing Passepartout after all. I'm sorry, Countess, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I have only so many hats. A Sherlock hat I haven't bought yet. The casual detective hat, sure. Anyways, I tried to befriend her. I would have succeeded in the end, but now, she shrugged, now there is nothing to buy. And nothing to threaten your business? I suggested. She shrugged. That would have been my business. But I have money. There will be another business. Monsieur Jaffer frowned suddenly and looked up. But mademoiselle, he said, you already own a shipping route, don't you? I own several, she snapped in return. I looked around the room. So then, this is what we have discovered. The watching faces were silent with expectation. I believe I see, Monsieur Fogg interjected suddenly, a hint of a smile on his lips. You are suggesting the murder did not occur when Monsieur Jaffer believed, but later. A blast of wind cooled her down. Is that your theory? Jaffer asked. I told them about the steam valve in the engine room. And how, when it squealed open, it had pumped cold air across the floor. With enough gas released, I believe it might be able to cool a body sharply. While also, my master remarked thoughtfully, making a loud enough noise to muffle a scream. This crime was committed by someone quite desperate and opportunistic. I continued. They passed just as the engine made that terrible noise, saw their chance, and attacked. And just happened to be carrying the weapon? The captain asked softly. Passepartout, is this a confession? No, monsieur, I cried. Rather that anyone might have done it. Monsieur Fogg stood up. A lot of empty nonsense, I fear, Passepartout. Captain, we had an arrangement. He put his wrists forward. You may arrest us. The captain thought for a moment, then shook his head. I cannot do it. An English gentleman is above reproach. Oh no, so I failed. No. I made the wrong choice right back. The previous one was the wrong choice. But someone must be to blame, I declared. Indeed, someone is, he replied sadly. And Madame Chu was my friend. I encouraged her to make this craft. I funded her experiments. I allowed you passengers on board. I could have helped to keep her safe. She was more valuable to me than you may realize. No one could have foreseen something so horrific. The captain shook his head. I am still ignorant now, but Madame Chu is gone. The boat is forfeit, my captaincy too. I cannot have you two arrested. There is no evidence. Any of my crew might have done it equally well. I fear we will never know. Oh no! I looked to my master, but he bowed his head. Today, the captain said, I will be letting a murderer walk free, but there is nothing else I can in conscience do. With that, he left the cabin, and in sober spirits we disembarked. Madame Chu's killer was never brought to justice. Oh no. My own suspicion that it was Carlotta, I'm fairly certain of that, and we made the choice of not... I made the wrong choice there. We made all the right choices except the last one. Yeah, of course I suspect her. Mademoiselle Carlotta was involved, was left unproven. Your character is now suave. It was totally the captain? Nah, I don't think so. Either way, we failed to solve the murder mystery. Carlotta is gonna go free. Very sad about that. Oh! That Buddha statue was worth a ton of money. An accordion. Let's buy the accordion. A cotton flower, sure, and a Smith & Wesson, sure. Can sell the compass. Yeah, sure, let's sell the compass. Try to limit our boxes. Ah, come on! Ah! So. Anyways, we are in Honolulu. A new route from Manila to Honolulu, that won't help us. From Honolulu... Let's see. It was as though Honolulu lived in one indrawn breath. A wheeling swath of city, of sky, white-laced waves, and pristine sand bounded by black volcanic bluffs. The town was entirely hidden behind groves of coconut and eucalyptus. We took a short tour. You look, said one of our coach drivers, said our coach driver, Hila, like city folk. I was born in Paris, I nodded. My first breath was of her smoke and perfume. So you are, like the great and sleepless city of Paris, always in a rush. He murmured something to his horse, which looked well fed and high-spirited. As a young man, I went to San Francisco to make my fortune. It too ran and scrabbled in pursuit of the almighty dollar. We are neither running nor scrabbling, I pointed out with affronted dignity, but I had to look away from Hila's calm look. Our adventure thus far had been somewhat harum-scarum. Yeah, Politemus, that's precisely why I took the stream title. We're going by the Daft Punk song. Let's see now. Barely had we placed our toes on dry land, then we were looking to depart. Oh, I had seen so many wonders, and yet each had been ultimately reduced to another mark in my master's ledger. But do you not wish the freedom to exhale, Passepartout? The coach driver asked. To stop running and simply feel the wind upon your face and the sun warming you and the sound of the ocean like a heartbeat. I will take my moments where I may. Hila, I agreed. There is a peace here. A harmony between land and sea and sky, which touches my soul. The coach driver sighed and turned his face up to the endless sky. A man may find himself here, he told me, but only if he wishes it. He invited us to his home that evening, and fed us dough-like poi and bright-fleshed slices of orange and guava. And I thought for once about peace and purpose. Instead of the distance yet to travel. My own purpose remained undimmed, but Honolulu was a pause, a moment pulled free of past and future, and containing only the taste of guava and salt-freshened wind. And we finished our day in Honolulu with a souvenir, a swirling conch shell collected from the beach as we walked back to the docks. And thank you for the cheers, Polytemus. A wave emote? What do you mean, Polytemus? We still only have the one emote for the channel. We're not quite there yet. Let's depart. Let's see, what are our choices? We can go to San Francisco by boat, banana boat. Or we can head to Acapulco by airship. That's expensive. So where do we go, folks? San Francisco again? Or Acapulco? What do you feel like? I'm pausing the game by doing this, by the way.